How often do you feel disappointed? Not because something went wrong, but because it didn't go your way. That's the silent power of expectation. And it might be ruining your life. This is Michael, and I'm joined today by Justin. This is the new Ashla podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla podcast. Today we're diving into a very important topic that I don't think is discussed enough in the scene today, and that is expectations. Expectations I see cause suffering everywhere in people's lives that I know, in society today, and in our own personal well-being and self-esteem.
Yeah. If you really think about them, they're like these future-based assumptions or beliefs about how things should be or how they should unfold, right? How others should behave
Yeah.
or who we should be. And they're really these mental scripts. And although they're like these future-based assumptions, they're often written by past experiences. So we're outside of time. Again, like we talked about in the last episode about being present. We're outside of time again. These things drag us out of time. And right, the only time, as we said, is right now. This is the only time that's happening right now. So these
Yeah.
things are things that we're trying to control about the future, written by the past. And it's just crazy. And
Oh,
that's why
so
it
well
causes so
said.
many problems, right? That's why it just and we talk a lot about being, shattered or ripped into pieces. This topic today is you're getting ripped into two different pieces, expecting a thing, and so that's why it does hurt us, not just in the
Yeah.
long run either, like right now.
Oh, in this moment, I mean, it's like I know I'm guilty of it where there's times where it's like I expect people to behave a certain way. I go to a family meeting and I expect everyone to be civil, and someone lashes out, or, you go and see a friend you haven't seen in a while and you expect them to greet you with this, I haven't seen you in forever. And you don't
Yeah,
really know what's going to happen. And this
right.
comes into that whole like trying to predict the future thing, which is so detrimental to our mental health because
Well,
when you plan for 1,000 outcomes,
it's even worse than that. You're not trying to predict it, you're trying to control it. Predictions are not always so bad as long as you don't get stuck there, always trying to predict what's happening or assume what's going to happen. But these things, these expectations are about controlling what's happening in the future or outside of time. And again, these mental scripts that are written by these past experiences or your cultural norms or your family pressure or these inner narratives, which aren't always great. So,
when it's like,
well, I just want to say real quick, they're not just thoughts. They are unconscious agreements that we make with the world
yes.
without the world's consent. So,
Oh,
bad
that's
news.
so beautiful.
Bad news.
I mean, it's like when we go through life, I know I've been so guilty of this where I know for me, actions of myself. So often do I want to be something more than I am. And it's like I'm not hitting that. I'm looking at the peak of the mountain and I want to be that so bad. And I beat myself up every step I take because I'm not there instead of
Mhm.
accept where I am and lower my expectations down to a much lower point so that I can start cultivating the skills necessary to start moving towards that peak. There was a conversation Jordan Peterson had that I loved so much, and he was talking to, I think it was Joe Rogan, and he was telling Joe, you got to lower the bar for the kids. And Joe's like, why would you lower the bar for the kids? It's like, if your kid is failing in school, the last thing you want to be telling them is you need to be a straight A student.
Yeah.
You got to lower that bar to the D. Have them climb up there. Let them feel the success and happiness of, hey, accomplish this. Then you can move it up a little bit, but you got to set the bar low for yourself and for others.
Yeah.
When you set unrealistic expectations on people or yourself, you will be disappointed every time and it will infuriate you.
Yeah. Yeah. And they will disappoint you every time because you're giving them an impossible task. Because what happens when we get just too much weight on us? We just finally we sit down and we say, forget it. I'm not doing anything now.
Yeah.
It shuts us off. And especially when we're doing it to ourselves. But, with my kids, it was always, listen, just do your best. I'm not disappointed in you. Did you do your best? And if the answer is yes, and I take them at their word, okay, that's important. Then just keep doing your best. You're going to have these ups and downs, especially as you're growing and you're going through school and you have these different subjects. So he's right. At least, you know, if it feels bad to put the bar low, well, just encourage them and teach them to do their best. And as we talk about on this show a lot, is your best is 20% sometimes, but don't let that beat you down, because other times you might be able to give 120, and that's when and that's when you start to feel empowered, right?
Yep.
Oh,
Well, you get to a point, if you have those expectations so high for so long, you get to that point where you can give 120 and you wind up shooting in 1,000 directions because you want to harness that energy and you get nothing done.
right.
Like, I am guilty of this so much where
Me
it's
too.
like, I premeditate, I plan. I finally have that moment of aspiration and I go. But I have
Yeah.
so much I want to get done, so much I want to become, that I wound up not doing any of it.
Yeah. Because you just get bogged down. Yeah.
I think another area that this is a big struggle is with families. It's like you hear a lot about childhood trauma in this day and age. We talk a lot about childhood trauma, but it's never about blaming your parents. It's
Yeah.
never your parents did the best job they could or they were mentally ill. It is one of those two things. But 9 out of 10, it's they did the best they could with the tools they had. And
Right.
sadly that looks messy. If you're a parent, you probably understand what I mean by that.
100%. Yeah. And from our earliest days, we're really taught that love and approval are often conditional. And it's not your fault if you do that. I probably did it too as a parent, but we're taught that
You know?
because when we were compliant, we were praised and shown affection and showered with things maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like you said, societal norms.
Right. But when we question or deviated away from that conditional love, we were corrected or rejected, which is
Yeah.
really the worst thing you can do. So really, as we growing in this, we slowly begin to expect ourselves to earn acceptance by meeting other people's standards, which is bullcrap.
Yeah.
It's not true. You don't need anybody's. You don't need to earn that kind of thing from anyone. And then we also internalize that we must perform to be loved, as you've shared with us and Heather shared with us before. She's not here. I'm pointing at an empty chair, but
She's here in spirit.
you guys have shared this with everyone before. So, because you're talking about I have to perform. And if I don't perform well, then I get rejected or I don't earn their acceptance,
Yeah.
which is just horse crap, dude. Big time. You don't have to earn anything.
When I think unmet needs are such a big part from childhood, and again, it's not that your parents didn't want to meet your needs. Everyone is so different, and every kid needs different things. And as kids,
Yeah.
we don't have the ability to vocalize what we need to be successful. And sadly, that transitions into adulthood. But
Yeah.
these unmet needs follow us from childhood into adulthood. I know for me, I never got validation growing up from my father, not to the degree I needed. But I also
Right.
never vocalized that, understandably. But in my adult life, I spent most of my time trying to earn people's validations with the math side.
Yeah. And when we grow up, it just continues because we have these invisible checklists, right?
You know?
By 25, I should have my life figured out. I should know what I want to do, and I should already be taking steps to get to 30. And by 30, I should be married and have kids. And that leads me to my fees when I should be successful and stable.
You know?
And these are expectations, not even from our parents, but from who knows, just society, I
Yeah, I was
suppose.
about to say society. And with what's marketed to us.
Right.
Everyone watches TV, everyone watches movies, and there's sort of these phases of life and development. In fact, there's a whole psychological practice around this called Erickson's stages of development, psychosocial stages of
Yeah.
development. And it's just these phases we go through in life where we're torn between two different things. Like those in their 30s are torn between community and business. Those aren't the terms he uses, but that's
Right.
virtually what it is.
Hmm.
Industry versus inferiority, I think, is maybe the terms. But to the point,
Yeah.
we have these preconceived notions, unconscious. I love how you phrased it in the beginning of this episode because we're going to reference it a lot. They are unconscious agreements we have made on how things should be.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what it is. You
Well,
know?
these seeds, we plant seeds a lot. That's our goal, is to plant as many seeds as possible, seeds that help people grow and help people unfold and heal. But the things we're talking about are also seeds. But these seeds are of comparison and maybe inadequacy.
You
And
know?
when our lives don't match this weird invisible timeline, we feel suffering. But my question to you, whose timeline is this? Like, where is, you
No,
know,
exactly.
where
I
where did Moses bring it down? Like, that's the one we forgot to look at. Like, is it chiseled in stone somewhere? Who's keeping track of this? Because it does cause people problems.
yeah. Oh, I see it. I know. It's like I lived with my mom for a very long period of time. And I had a friend who bought a house. He had a lot of the guys moved in. I was in a relationship, but I wanted to stay with my girl. She was living with me at the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, they were like, man, you need to get your own place. You need to do your own thing. It's like, I mean, it would
That
be
too.
good for me to do that, but it's like, I'm not in competition with you guys. I don't
But
care.
really, I mean, is it good for you to do that? It just depends
No, that was such a
on,
train wreck of a relationship. I would have been screwed. I wouldn't have been able to rent anywhere, and I would have gone
right.
bankrupt.
Well, and this brings us right to the heart of the problem with expectations. These especially these expectations that we don't even know where they came from.
Yep.
They're just kind of pushed on us. But is that kind of attitude good for everyone? I would say some people need to live with others
Yeah.
because maybe they're not quite ready. We talk
Yeah.
about divine timing a lot, and expectations are not happening in this time. They're from the past and about the future.
Yep.
So what's best for a person right now? And what we teach here is alignment. We seek to be in alignment. We don't chase these artificial timelines that came from some freaking stone tablet somewhere, that by some dude with a beard, maybe chiseled with a rock and a hammer or something. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
just,
Well, it's like
you
I'm
know,
looking at it as you're bringing this up. It makes me reflect on it. It's like I think realistically, what happens with society is we're constantly, like you said, looking at the past. So here's the example of my brothers. They're 20 years older than me, and I know I had one brother who was just like, you should be settled, you should be on your own. And it's like he's got a mortgage payment of $1,300 for a big, not a big house, but a
yeah,
good size house. It's like I'm paying 500 more than that for a one bedroom apartment.
right.
It's like economics are different, life
Yes.
is different, but we're constantly making these comparisons of the past, the nuclear family, and it's like that's not a realistic precedent to set for this day and age,
No.
which is why there's so much division.
But also, this day and age should not set unspoken expectations upon the masses either.
Yes.
Now, listen, I understand that it's difficult to individualize these concepts. Like, how do we help every individual where these things may not really mesh well, or they can't align with these expectations? I don't know what the answer is. All
Yeah.
I know is that it's really tough, and we start to see the problems that we're talking about because we do just kind of shove people in boxes and don't even tell them what box they're in or why they're
You
in it.
know.
So,
Well, and it's I mean
again, we
we
we teach alignment. We don't care about these artificial things
yeah.
because no two paths are ever meant to look or be the same.
Yeah.
That's where we start.
Yeah, I heard a quote a while back, and it's just like if you're on the healing journey and you're following a path, you're probably going the wrong way.
Say that one more time.
If you're on the healing path and you're
Mm,
following a path that's already laid out, you're probably
mm,
going the wrong way.
mm.
Because you got to forge your own, because it's your own. You have your own things you're working through. You can gain insights from as many
Yeah.
people as you want, listening to us, listening
Right.
to other people in this scene. But your
Hmm.
journey will be unique to you. And if you're trying to carbon copy someone else's healing journey, you're probably not going to get all the healing you need.
And that's one of the greatest things about being a teacher of this path, is that I get to guide others along new paths all the time. And it's incredible to see how people, I give them the tools, the teachings, I give them, the encouragement, and I escort them to the doorway. They go through it or they don't. But every time someone goes through the doorway, it's different, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually one of the coolest parts about this, because I get to live this path, and you will too when you teach. And all the others that come behind us will understand what I'm saying eventually. And teachers out there right now will know what I'm saying. But I get to experience this path in so many unexpected ways because no two paths are meant to look or be the same. You have the tools, you have the all the stuff that I had, and I'm giving them to you, but what you do with them is where things get very interesting.
Because those tools will be utilized for things you never dreamed possible.
Exactly. Because I can't possibly walk the path 8.3 billion ways.
Yeah.
I can't. I can only walk it my way. And as a teacher, it's important to remember that I don't have expectations on how you are going to walk this path.
Right.
And I've never given you expectations or any of my students. We do have agreements that we make together, right? As far as how the training goes, all these other things, those are agreements, not expectations.
Yeah.
So, when I said earlier that expectations aren't always bad, I want to restate something. Make agreements with others, not ever have expectations. Make agreements. Now, Heather and I have talked about, this whole expectation thing for many years, especially with a lot of the trauma she got from her old relationships. And, I'd always tell her, like, look, I love you unconditionally. I love you without expectation. You are free to do whatever you want. You don't have to stay here forever, or you can stay here forever. That's, I don't have any expectations, but we do have agreements, right, with each other.
Yeah.
We won't shout at each other, or we won't see other people on the signs, or whatever, these common things that couples typically make in a I won't say a normal relationship, but a typical relationship, because I don't know what a normal relationship looks like.
Yeah, no, ain't that the truth?
What typical ones look like, So, but we have agreements and not expectations. And really, I think I'm going to start going using that instead, because we're always learning. So I just found a better way with myself to explain. You should never have expectations. You should have agreements, and you should hold to those agreements, because that's true virtue, and that's having integrity and sticking to your word. But yeah, if you don't have someone's agreement, then they're going to disappoint you.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. And, it's actually you disappointing you because you put expectations on them.
No, I heard this beautiful quote a while back, and it was unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. And it's like, And I'll be honest, I have been very guilty of this in a lot of my past relationships. I never learned how to express my needs or anything. And so it's like I just keep expecting people to be mind readers, which is the worst mentality to have.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that doesn't get anywhere without I love how you said it, the agreements, when you can make those agreements with people. Hey, I don't like it when you do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it doesn't mean they have to stop it, but they can take your feelings into consideration, maybe not do it, whatever it is around you, or whatever the agreement needs to be, but you can have these discussions.
And if they don't ever agree, well, then
Yeah.
Yeah. And you may be disappointed by them not agreeing, or whatever, but that still leaves the door open for compromise, perhaps, or some of that. But if you just have an expectation and just say, they're going to let you down, but really you're letting yourself down, they never let you down because you didn't ask for their agreement.
Yeah. Well, it's like, we were talking just a little bit ago about societal expectations. Like, we live in such a cutthroat society where people write people off left and right because of their opinions, beliefs, views, or whatever. And it breaks my heart to see it. I've seen so many families break up just over the election because you don't agree with me, then I don't like you anymore. And it's like, that's someone who's been in your life for your whole life, and you're just going to cut them out because of an election.
Right. Because two old men were fighting for your attention.
And there's so many areas I'm seeing this happen. We live in a society where if everyone doesn't agree with everything we believe, then people don't want to deal with one another. And it breaks my heart because those expectations of people are going to lead to lonely lives.
Yeah. And it's not even expectations. Sometimes people make assumptions of, we'll just use the election, because this has really been kind of really earth shattering for our country. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you find yourself on. This has separated people loved ones from each other, friends. And it's not even so much about what you actually believe, but then people now are assuming that you just believe, or assuming that you voted for this person or that, and they're just
And that
dropping.
defines your character. Like,
It does define your character. It does. And let me tell you something. For anybody in my life that's ever done that to me, I kiss them goodbye and I walk away. Because if that was the thing, and especially if it's not based on the truth, then it was time for us to go our separate ways. Because I can't exist in that same kind of ideal or energy as you.
well, I like how you brought up the energy, because when it comes down to it, it's like, I do not care if people have different views as me. If you want, we can discuss it. If
Mm-hmm.
it's really that heated for you, but let's walk away as friends afterwards. Let's not make the conversation more important than our relationship.
The spice of life, man.
You know?
The spice of life. And we cannot grow in an echo chamber. We cannot. It's hard and it's uncomfortable, but that's where we grow the best.
When people love echo chambers because it doesn't challenge their beliefs.
That's right. That's right. Because it feels safe.
No,
But what feels safe isn't always safe. We
no.
just talked about that. That show will hit after after this recording. That show will hit. We were talking about being tricked by beautiful things, right? So,
Yeah.
and that's happened a lot, especially this last couple of years. Yeah.
Well, it's like, I look at it as society. We used to have two things that kept everybody together like glue. You had religion and community.
Hmm.
But now that we have the internet, communities have now dissolved into these little subsects, these tribes
Yeah.
that share their own ideals, share their own beliefs, and it's created so much separation amongst the masses. It's like reality went from being these two cohesive realities to 1,000 micro realities, and no one wants the reality challenge because of how much it disrupts their being.
Yeah.
Because they identify so strongly with their ego and their beliefs.
Yes. Because we have this really strong desire nowadays to be right. Even if when we know we're not telling the truth, we just want to be right. We
Yeah.
just want to win. And that's been hijacked by people who aren't very great, especially the politicians. I pick on them all the time. I hope I don't become a politician one day, you know.
Only by force do I see that happening, but you would make a good politician if we had
Well,
an ethical system.
yeah, that's a problem. A lot of good people enter politics. These young men and women, they enter politics and they have truth on their side and they go in there and it's just a meat grinder.
Yep.
They just
It's
get
a sad
ground up.
truth.
It is a sad
So
truth.
how does this tie into expectations? Is it
Uh,
expecting others to conform? I think that's really my big
yeah.
takeaway from this is
Well,
the
yeah, because look, let's say I'm on team A and you're team B, or I believe you are. You may not even be. If you don't mirror or parrot what I say, we've seen this stuff with the whole what they used to call it. Oh, dang it. What's political correctness they used to call it, right?
yeah.
That kind of died, I think, a little bit. I don't hear people saying it a lot anymore. It was like going back to the whole political correctness thing. And I don't have an opinion on that other than let people say what they're going to say. Then you'll know everything you need to know about them, right?
Yep.
I would rather them be able to say it so that I know, or I can start to know at least where a person's coming from. But if you think about it like that, if you're not speaking in the way that I tell you to speak, or I expect you to speak, now we can't be friends. Now, 20 years of friendship is out the window.
No.
And then I start, bad mouthing you or whatever, or vice versa. If I'm using language that I feel is more inclusive, or it's more kind, or it's more whatever, you could be on the other side and say, oh man, I can't believe you're using those words. You're such a wussy, or whatever, whatever, whatever. You
Right.
see how this goes? So
Yep.
that's been going on for a really long time, and it's starting to stress us out, isn't it?
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
it's terrible. I mean, as we're diving into relationships, I mean, what are some other key areas in relationships, especially close ones, friendships, families, intimate relationships? Where are some other ways expectations tend to rear their ugly head and create disharmony in our lives?
Well, you touched on one of them, expecting others to fulfill these needs that we haven't expressed to them. You talked about that with your dad, and
Yep.
and we just assume people should know. You
Yep.
know, I've been with Heather. We've been married 20. We've been together 24 years, nonstop, every day for 24 years, and she should know me. But is that really how I should approach that? Yeah, maybe she should know some things about me and understand my habits and stuff because we've been together every day for 24 years. But that's still not the right way to do it. I can't expect her to know me in like a mind reader capacity,
Yeah.
right?
Well, just to
Um,
step it up one other notch, I mean, we are constantly going through a rebirthing, a change in our beliefs, our
yeah.
ideals. I mean, we're in a constant state of metamorphosis, and to assume,
Hmm.
even if they've been with us for 20 years, that they're going to
Right.
really know the ins and out of us while we're going through that, and vice versa. You can't think, oh, I've known this person for 20 years, I get them. You need to have those conversations.
Well,
You know?
and yeah, that's why I don't have to expect her to know me because we have.
Yeah.
I express what I need to express.
Yeah.
But she's kind of the more passive aggressive one. I'm clearly not passive aggressive at all. So if something's not being met, and especially if it was something that she agreed to, then we have that conversation. Say,
Yeah.
listen, dude, you agreed to this. And I agreed to do this for you during our compromise phase because everybody fights. And we don't fight as often anymore because we really don't linger too long in that space where we're, like,
Yeah.
putting boxing gloves on. But much younger in our relationship, we did. And those fights would drag out for 2 or 3 days sometimes
You know?
because we had these expectations of each other.
Well, I think another big thing for you guys was the development of communication, like you guys really learning how to synchronize with that. Because so many couples end up, I know I dealt with this in my 7 year relationship just a few years in, and that lack of communication, we became maybe each other's best friends, but also each other's worst enemies. And it was this
Sometimes, yeah.
constant butting of heads because neither of us were able to communicate effectively.
Right. Yeah. So this creates disappointment and distance when we
Yeah.
expect others to read our minds and whatever. Another one is projecting our way of being onto others. It's
Yeah.
not just our immediate partner, but it could be our friends, our coworkers, the people outside those circles, our customers, whatever. We just, if we're expecting people to just know how to behave, know how to act, know how to feel, know how to think,
You know?
and act like we do. And when they don't, we feel like offended. Like,
Yeah.
how dare you? How dare you? You know, how dare you not know the exact way that you're supposed to approach me and talk to me? Oh, dude, why are you not healing? I see this a lot in these. I don't know how to classify them, but like these more metaphysical circles that kind of go outside of this that include all these different kind of modalities, these healing modalities, alternative healing stuff, alternative spirituality. I see a lot of that there in those groups where you go in there and you're just kind of like looking around and you're like, oh, this place is kind of cool. And you say
You know?
one thing sometimes, and man, they just dogpile you. How dare you not know how to think and heal and act like we do?
You know?
So, as if you walked in and just slapped the first person you seen, right? And all you did was trying to push your way through and figure out what these folks are all about. And of course, you see these groups and they're all like, we're all about love and light and whatever, 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 right? So, well, it
Yeah.
sure didn't feel like that after you guys punched me 30 times for asking a question.
Yeah, right. When you
But
see that in a lot of areas, like I'm a firm
mhm,
believer there is no such thing as a stupid question. But if you're in a
mhm.
place where they treat questions as stupid questions, get the hell out of there.
Oh man, some of them are super serious. And I know I come across as a serious person, but
You have
man,
never
they do.
once frowned on me for a question I've asked, no matter what it was.
No.
And I've had a couple where I was even testing the waters to see
Yeah.
if that'd get a little rise out of you. But nope, nope.
Yeah, good luck.
Calm mentor Justin.
Yeah, good luck. And so another thing is we start to you're feeling resentful or hurt when people don't meet these things that we're talking about. Because I like these little silent contracts that you're signing someone's name to, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it comes back to the communication aspect. It's like often, and this is what I've seen with a lot of couples, is doing my relationship coaching, is you have one person who's starting to notice they're not getting their needs met, whether it's intimacy, emotional validation, whatever, and they're upset about it and they're not talking about it, but they're not even noticing that there was the same thing going on over here where they had expectations that made them start pulling away. And it's what
Mhm.
creates this whole push pull dynamic and what causes attachment is because all of a sudden our core wounds get flared up. So this starts pulling away, and all of a sudden this feeling unwanted, feeling unvalued, feeling unworthy, and they chase after. But it's this push pull dynamic where no one's talking about the issues. And it could be because, hey, I brought it up one day and my partner got really angry at me when I brought it up. And that's something that needs to be addressed. But
Yeah.
be mindful of what expectations are on you, unspoken,
Mhm.
and bring them to the surface. You want to make a relationship last. Don't be afraid to call people out and try to create discussions. It doesn't mean be a jerk about it. It doesn't mean try to make them feel like crap because we're all
Mhm.
guilty of this to some degree. This
Yeah.
is something we all need to learn to do. So if you notice someone starting to act a certain way, there's probably an expectation they had that went awry. And so just call them out. Like, what's on your mind? What's bugging you? Like, let's work this out.
Yeah.
Make sure you're in a place where you can receive that because
Yeah.
that's where people mess up is they get really angry, like, what's wrong? And then the person's like, you're wrong. And it's just this explosion.
I'll say this and then I'll respond directly to that because it's important and it's coming from somebody been in a relationship for a really long time. But, we teach here that compassion begins when expectation ends and communication begins where assumptions die. So, but I will tell you the worst question you can ask your wife or she can ask you, especially after a long time being together. And a long time could be 3 years, right?
Yeah.
I'm not asking people to imagine 24 years because that's kind of a rare thing. It's getting more rare these days. But a long time can be a year and a half, whatever that is for you. But the worst question you can ask is what's wrong? What is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? Because that sounds like an interrogation. It sounds like an attack. It's better. I wish she was here so I could demonstrate, but it's better, if she's sitting on the couch and she looks really grumpy or she looks upset. I'll walk up to her and put my hand on her head and say, how's it going, champ? Or, whatever. Just really gentle and not looking to interrogate. But she hates it when I ask her what's wrong because it's almost like, tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. We can move on. Right. So I don't like that question either because sometimes I'm sitting in here and, she doesn't know this, but I might have just prayed or meditated. And I have this very stoic look on my face because I'm locked in and I want to hold on to the messages I received. Right. But it
No.
looks like I'm angry or looks like I'm whatever. And the worst question that she could ask me is, what's wrong with you? Almost like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So find better ways to communicate with people in a way that
Well,
that will open them up. At
yeah,
least
it's
for
figuring out what will be a trigger and what will be
right.
something that'll invite conversation. The big thing me and Allison do, one of the reasons we've never fought, is we have this.
What
And
is that?
it is just whenever one of us has something that's bugging us, we're triggered, something's coming up for us, or we're concerned about something, we write in the book and we set it on the bed, either under the pillow or just on the bed. And then it gives the person who's not knowing what's going on can read it, digest it, and once I've gathered what I've gotten from what she said, I can either go to her with a conversation or write a reply. And I
Mm.
mean, we've only had to use it like 4 or 5 times, but it's created some of the deepest conversations we've ever had, and it gets things off our chest and out in the open, and it
So that
doesn't
when
build those resentments.
you do physically meet, then all that kind of heavy stuff has already been.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. What
yeah,
do you call that book?
it's just our little, I want to call it a venting journal, but
There you go.
yeah,
That works. Yeah.
yeah, and it's a way, and it also
It's a
when
little
you're
shared
writing in
journal
there,
too. That's cool.
yeah, because I mean, it gives you a chance to sort of contemplate what you want to say, what's bugging you, allows you to
Hmm.
articulate in a way that isn't accusatory, or even if it is a
Now,
little bit.
do you find yourself rehearsing what you're going to say by using that? Does it encourage your rehearsal so that it's a performance and not kind of real?
As far as when I respond to something written in there,
Well, when yeah, so when you see the thing, and you're like, oh, right. And even
Well,
if it's
there
like,
is that moment. There's
oh,
like, ooh, what's in here?
yeah,
But usually no. It's like I'll read through it and then I'll try to understand a few important things. I'll try to understand
yeah,
one, what is actually upsetting her.
right,
Two, is there anything I'm doing that's impacting this at all?
right.
And then three, what's a way I can go about creating resolution or compromise with this and then present that? And if it's
Ah,
something that I feel might be a heavy compromise, that's when I'll write my own entry.
what I love about this is it brings us back to creating agreements versus expectations. That's what I love about this. It's really good. I like that.
Right? I can't say it was my original idea, but it's been one of the best things I've ever done in a relationship because it just saves you on all these fights, all these heavy emotions, and
Right.
it creates pure communication. And I think
Yeah.
communication is like one of the most important pillars of a relationship.
That's very interesting.
So another big area we have a lot of issues is with ourselves and expectations. I
Mm.
know we touched on it a good amount earlier, but let's dive into this a bit.
These are the most relentless ones.
Yeah.
I mean, relentless, just bombarded all the time if we let it. And we hope because we hold ourselves to a vision of perfection. Here we go with the perfect thing again, right?
Yeah.
And
Or
that was
just
never ours to begin with.
right. Well, it's like we talked about earlier, societal standards and what we think is the norm for where we're at in life. I
Mm.
love one thing you brought up that I want to really go into is knowing where you're at in life. It's like
Mhm.
so many people in their late 20s, 30s,
Yeah.
40s are
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I have no direction. And it's okay to not have direction.
Well, who's that guy? Gary, what's his last name? Gary
Vanderchuck?
V. Gary V.
Yep.
He's relentless on the fight against what we're talking about because he talks to all kinds of people who say, "Oh, I'm too old," or
Yep.
whatever. I don't have the education, and he does not take any prisoners. Right? He
Yeah.
says,
No, I
"Who
love his
cares if
work.
you're 50? Who cares if you're 40? Who cares if you're not married by 32 or whatever?" And he's right because we cannot put unrealistic timelines for things that we're talking about, like healing or success or growth and transformation. You cannot put timelines because the only time that exists is where? Right here. Oh, because we'll say things like, "Oh, I should be past this by now. I should be healed from this by now. I should have figured it out by now." Uh, you know, and I wish Gary V was sitting right here to kind of tell us all in a very colorful way
Yeah.
that no, because what this does, this bombardment creates shame, and it robs us of having grace and compassion for ourselves, but that also bleeds out from us, and then we start treating other people like that too,
Yeah.
with judgments. This perfectionism, it's horse. You know what, I'm talking about horse crap a lot today, but it is
It
this
fits.
perfectionism and self-judgment. It is very bad for you because it locks you into a cage.
Yeah. Well, it's, man, when it comes down to it, the more we strive to be more than we are, and I'm not saying don't do that. In fact, that is the journey. It's expansion, it's evolution. But you got to meet yourself where you're at. There's this phrasing in psychology. I can't remember the psychologist off the top of my head, and I know I talk about it in tons of our episodes, where there is the true self and the ideal self. It is proven that the bigger the gap between these two things, the more lack of the more you lack confidence, the more your self-esteem is ruined, the greater the gap, the worse these things are. If
Yeah.
you can just look at yourself now, hey, I sit on the couch and watch TV every day. I have no aspiration. All right, start small. Once a week, go for a walk. Don't tell
Mhm.
yourself you're going to go hit the gym every day. Don't
Mhm.
tell yourself I'm going to go ahead and start a business. Do not start there. Start with one small actionable step. Self trust is so important, and most people are unaware of what self trust is.
And
Self
it
trust
doesn't
isn't,
come at the snap of a finger. You got to
no,
build that.
it's not a cognitive, I trust myself, I know what's good for myself. No, it is a spiritual knowing.
Mhm.
It is your body and your mind and your spirit being attuned to saying, I know you got this and I will follow you. And I know that's a weird
Mhm.
way to explain it, but the body keeps the score. And if you're constantly letting yourself down, the more you're going to give yourself excuses to let yourself down, the more you're going to get in your way, and the more you're going to judge yourself. If you don't meet yourself where you're at, you will never meet yourself at all.
Well, and it ties into creating this identity around who we think we should be,
Yeah.
right? And look, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it this way because reaching for better, reaching for growth, reaching for these ideas like the agreements that we have. You know, I'm reaching for being courageous all the time. It's not going to be that way, but creating an identity around at least reaching and seeking growth and seeking transformation and seeking betterment, that's not a bad way to do it. But when you become attached to this other kind of idealized version of yourself, especially one that's sculptured around this external approval all the time, I got to be talked nice to. I got to, I
Yeah.
always have to make everybody happy. And that's not inner truth. If you create an identity around using inner truth as the platform to stand on that, and just not expecting yourself to be perfect or all this stuff. But when you're always worried about what other people are thinking, or cultural approval, parental approval, friend approval, and if you're looking for all these approvals except for your own, you're just going to abandon who you are at the end of the day.
And the one thing I want to say to this, because I'm guilty of this, and I know a lot of people that are, a lot of people don't think they care what anybody thinks about them. I hear that from more people than I don't. And a lot of
Right.
those people are the ones I'm the most worried about because, again, I
Yeah.
was one of those. I didn't think I cared what people thought about me until I started doing this introspection. I started looking at my actions and I started realizing I wasn't validating my own life. I was seeking it
Hmm.
outside of myself. And that takes a little bit of digging, a little bit of soul searching to really see. So even if you're nodding your heads like, nah, that's not me. I don't care what people think about me.
Right.
Really take some time to reflect on your actions and your behaviors. And even if you're someone who likes to raise hell and make a scene,
Mm.
is that also you not trying to meet people's expectations of you?
Right. Right. Because you're fighting. It's fight or flight. You
Yep.
chose you
It's the
chose violence.
troublesome kid that knows the only way to get attention is to raise a fit.
Right. Yeah. Break stuff, right?
Yep.
I remember a time when you and I were going through this similar topic, and the topic around caring what people think. I remember telling you, and we'll see if you remember. We got to this point where you had said something, and I said, "You should not care what I think." Right? You, as my student, my apprentice, the person I am helping to become the keeper of the flame, as it were. You should not care what I think about you. And do you remember what else I said? I said what other people think of us is their business. It's none of our business. It's
And I'll
none of
say
our
I'm still
business.
learning this one, but that
It's
echoes in
hard.
my head all the time when I catch myself. I'm like,
It's hard. This stuff is heavy because we're facing things we didn't even know were there. But honestly, what other people think of me is none of my business. I have my circle where my business is. They have their circle where their business is. If they're in their business and they're talking about me, that's not my business. That's their business.
yep. Well, one thing I want to give credit to this too, because it has helped me so much. Like, use this as an affirmation. When you
Hmm.
catch yourself where you realize you're playing a part or you're acting in alignment to make other people happy or stepping out of your own truth,
Hmm.
that's the moment. I shouldn't care what these people think about me. It's none of my business.
It's none of my
And it's a
business.
great way to mentally sort of create that separation from that because when
Yeah.
it's not your business, which it isn't, it's like that helps you create that divide because when you have people in your life, even work relations, which is the
Yeah.
difficult one, you got to
Right.
get to a point where the only validation you need is yourself. That's what this journey is
That's
all
right.
about. And I'm not going to say you're going to get there right off the bat. I'm not there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's moments where you want validation. Like that is part of
Of
being
course.
human.
Of course.
But the more we can
Let's use
develop,
the show for example. I'll give you a perfect example. There are times when I go, we spend the time doing the show. We edit it. We make it flow as best we can. We write good notes. We put a lot of effort and a lot of love into this what we're doing right now. And we post it, and it sometimes it's difficult not seeing any feedback, for example. So, yeah, every single one of us, myself included, fall victim to this from time to time. But at the end of the day, the only person I'm trying to impress is me.
Well,
And the only bar that I've set for myself is, did I do my best? Did I do my best today? That's the only metric I have to hit.
yep.
Whether
And that's
that's in
even if your
my
best is 20%. Want to remind
right,
people out there, best does not
right.
mean giving it your all.
It doesn't matter if it's my relationships with my loved ones or my friends or my partner. It doesn't matter if it's my work. It doesn't matter if it's the show. It doesn't matter if it's the teachings that I write and teach. The only metric that is important to me is, did I do my best? That's all I can do. That's all you can do. That's all you can do is your best. So, yeah, it's none of my business what people think of me. Even when they tell me, and I have said this to people, listen, I don't agree with what you're saying, and really, it's none of my business.
Nope.
And you should see the look on their face. Because they don't know what to do with that, right?
Yeah.
How you feel about me is your business, and because it's not going to change me, change how I do something, but also I can't control how you feel. So,
Yeah.
what's the path of least resistance here? Just not worry about it. Hakuna Matata, man. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah.
So, and yeah, again, it's easy. Sounds
Crap, that's a
easy.
great way to sum up this episode.
Hakuna Matata. So,
And I want to tap more into just sort of creating this identity around who we should be because, man, these masks we wear, the hardest part of this journey is the first steps because it's really hard to separate ourselves from these personas that
yeah.
we show up in life with. And these personas are exactly what keep us trapped in these expectations.
Hmm.
And the more we can evaluate ourselves for who we are and where we are in life and love ourselves regardless of where that's at, the more we can find peace in life and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. There is all we can do is control what we can control. And that's really all we should focus our energy on. And tying that to expectations or conditions for relationships is, you can't control what another person does. You shouldn't even try to control it. That's certainly not the path that we teach and walk. For us, it's about presence more than control. There's this illusion of control versus that kind of piece of presence.
Yeah.
Control, really, at the end of the day, control is the great lie of expectations. It tells us that we are safe only when everything goes according to our plan. Presence tells us that we're safe because we are aligning, and that's hit or miss every day too. My best might be 100%, but my alignment might only be here today, right? Depends.
Yeah.
But that's all I have to worry about is, did I do my best, and am I seeking alignment?
When I think also when it comes to presence and this need for control, it's being content, which
Yeah.
is where a lot of people get hung up. Everyone's shooting for that next new thing, that next avenue, that next big purchase, that next step and phase in life. And we don't stop and smell the roses. Do that daily. Stop and smell the roses. Appreciate
Mhm.
where you're at, what you have, and the things in it because nothing's permanent and you will have those regrets in later years when those things are
Mhm.
gone. The more we can be present and content with the people in our life and our situations, the more we can remove these expectations and take things as they are. It is a letting go of control and an acceptance of things as they are, as they should be, because we don't have control over that. What we have control over is a very small amount of things. Even a lot of ourselves, we don't have control over. Again, that whole 20%, we're not talking about, I don't feel like doing it today. There's my 20%. It's the
Right.
alignment of, man, I'm really trying to focus on this today. I'm only getting 20% output from my brain. I'm only got the energy to really push this far with something.
Right. Because that's called settling, and we don't settle. Right? We don't.
No. So when it comes to life, I mean, where are our expectations with life, attachment to outcomes. I think that's been one
Mhm.
of my greatest ones. Is it's like I'm following a business pursuit or a relationship, and I'm so attached to the vision, the potential of something, that I'm not taking stock of the moment and where I'm at with it.
Yeah. It robs us of gratitude or being
Yeah,
able to see the things that are in front of us and spontaneity. If we expect something to be better, or if we expect something better, I should say, something more, we stop seeing the beauty in what's already here.
Yeah. You're
The
waiting for that.
miraculous, and it's really a tragedy because the actual miraculousness of this world and of life becomes mundane. We miss the only spot where time exists, and that's in the moment. We miss things.
That's true joy right there. When you have that
Yeah.
spontaneity, when you have that seeing the beauty for what things are in front of you instead of waiting for things to unfold. Again, it's
Hmm.
part of that journey and not the destination.
Yeah. And life, we've talked about how suffering is sometimes necessary, but the degree of suffering necessarily isn't, because one man's suffering is another man's contentment. But there is a degree of heat and pressure that help mold us, but that's where the suffering, the quote unquote suffering, could end. Or you can prolong it and make it worse by operating under this illusion of control and not seeing the things you should be grateful for in life,
Yeah. You
and being
know,
attached to things.
I had a great conversation with Allison last night, and we were talking about, it's like so many people, their form of fulfillment is watching television, playing video games, and that's their whole life. And I've
Right.
been that guy. For most of my
Yeah.
life, I have been that guy. And it's like that is exactly I'm gonna call it this minute word. I'm coining this TM fulfillment
Mm.
because it is this false sense of you're getting your emotional highs and downs, that instant gratification of winning awards in games or seeing a series to
Mm.
completion while you binge it. And it's this false sense of fulfillment because the greatest fulfillment comes from taking action and accomplishing things in your own life, doing hard things and seeing it through to the end.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people suffer from that,
Yeah.
especially nowadays.
Well, it's what's sold to us. That's the norm, right? It's the societal
Mhm.
norms. Oh, we just stay home with the kids, watch TV all the time. It's like, well, how often do you play with your kids? Like, I take them out on the weekends. Like, you know,
Every once in a while, I let them out.
yeah, right? Undo the lock on the cage.
Yeah, so it seems that way.
So when we have expectations, when expectations rule our life, we are trying to micromanage so much in our life. So even if we don't know it, these expectations, there is a hidden cost that we deal with.
Mm.
Man, chronic disappointment, I think, is one of the most prevalent ones I've seen, where you have
Hmm.
these expectations on people, on situations, on the way things should be. And it creates this chronic disappointment, which leads to these major spouts of depression and just helplessness because you're so concerned about things outside of you that you have no control over.
Yeah. Yeah, we find ourselves in a cycle of letdowns and disappointments, not because life has failed us, but because we've narrowed the only acceptable outcome by trying to control everything, because the expectations become demands at
Yeah.
some point, right? And we become disillusioned when reality doesn't match the fantasy instead of meeting reality where it is,
Oh, well said.
right? We create internal conflict because what is and what we feel should be is a match reality.
I mean, it comes into that whole like when we have a relationship with someone, we have a relationship with two people, who they are and who they are in our heads. Same goes for reality. The greater the gap between how you think life should be and how life is going to lead to so much conflict if they are more the more they
Mhm.
are out of alignment. The more it's gonna make you reality is gonna break at the seams. You're gonna see these moments that cause you to be triggered and flare up because it triggers that inner child to freak out because all of a sudden this whole imaginary game I've been playing is gone.
Yeah. Yeah. And instead of adjusting our perspective, because we are the common denominator for these problems, each of us individually in our own lives, we start to resent the world, and then we start to resent ourselves for not measuring up to these ideals that are fantastical and not rooted in reality.
Yeah, no, so well said. Another big thing I've seen is illness. It's like the more you're trying to demand things be a certain way in your life, the more you try to have these expectations the way plans need to go. Your
Hmm.
blood pressure goes up, your heart starts racing.
Yeah.
It does so much damage to your body when you got cortisol levels that high because you're
Hmm.
so determined for things to be perfect.
Right. Right. We start having strained and fragmented connections with people. That's one of the
Yeah.
hidden.
Well, especially when people don't line up. We're talking about reality breaking at the seams.
Right.
It's horrible when you're casting people into roles. That is the last
Yeah.
thing you want to do. You want to hold people to no standard. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are standards. It's those agreements, right? You
Yeah.
know, it's like I have a level of tolerance with people in my life where it's like, don't you talk down to me or belittle me. You respect my boundaries, my space, my relationships, and we're
Yeah.
cool. But those are conversations we have.
We stop seeing people. We stop seeing them for what they are.
Yeah.
And we start encouraging them to not be authentic with us or with themselves. We can do damage to people this way. And we often do damage people this way. So, especially when love becomes conditional and intimacy becomes a performance, right? And we're not relating to each other soul to soul, but we're doing it like actors, role to role.
Yeah. You're a
And
poet and you didn't know it.
expectation kills your curiosity. You know, curiosity is one of the most purest things you can have because with curiosity, anything's possible, right? But when your expectations of people they start to kill that curiosity in you, connection cannot thrive. It will fragment and it will disconnect, and you'll be left wondering why your life feels, especially your life with your partner or your friends or your family or whoever, feels like really really hard to do anymore.
Yeah. Well, I see it in a lot of divides within my own family where everyone has these expectations of each other and how they should behave, how they should react, how they need to show up in a family system, and it's
Hmm.
like you can't do that. You can't do that. I mean, you can, but it's going to lead to you being disappointed and more division between you guys.
Yeah. Uh, Something that you put in the notes today for the show, which I thought was really, really important, was this kind of creates stagnation and
Yeah.
that fear of not wanting to go forward without a guarantee. I think a lot of us suffer from that from time to
No.
time.
No, it's so true though. I know for me, it's like I've tried to do the entrepreneurial thing 2 or 3 times now, but I didn't get very far from takeoff because I did not have that certainty. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I've learned with this path is this is all about as we unlearn how to be ourselves, it's all about jumping into the unknown, and we have to have trust that the universe is going to catch us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we got to be flapping our wings and
We got to try and
matching
fly.
its energy, but it's about
Yeah.
trust, not just in ourselves, but in others and in the way the world's going.
But here's an important point here. When we have fear of moving forward because we don't have any guarantees, we resist this because it threatens control. Control is threatened by change.
And uncertainty, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. Life does not bloom on demand. It must get like a flower, it must get water and sunlight and good soil. And these are things that you can do to prepare yourself for bloom, for blossoming, right? As you just said, you meet the universe halfway, or God halfway, or the force, or whatever your flavor is. But at the end of the day, we don't care about how, right?
No.
So we don't worry about how. We just worry about our part. So, I want people to ask themselves these three little questions here and do it gently. But the first one is what expectations are quietly shaping or destroying your peace? So I want you to think about that. Where are you holding yourself or others to standards unspoken? What would change if you choose to release the demand and trust the moment? Because our path, the path of the Luminari is not one of perfect foresight. We wish. We wish somebody could do that, right? But it's more the path is one of sacred trust in ourselves, in others, in the universe, in the force, God, whatever.
No, beautifully said. Now, when it comes to tools to handling this, the more you can inquire, the more you can be self
Mhm.
reflective and analyze your thoughts, behaviors, these moments you're triggered, and just ask yourself, what expectation am I holding here? What is it that's out of my control that my body is screaming to try to get control over? Because
Yeah.
often when we talk about triggers, this ties into inner child work, and the inner child is what reacts to it, these unhealed
Mhm.
parts of ourselves. And often it's a kid who was helpless at some point in time, feeling that helplessness again. Am I
Mhm.
being seen? Am I being valued? Are my needs being met? How
Hmm.
can I communicate this in a healthy way? Because when you have those expectations, especially that mind reading bit,
Hmm.
you will be disappointed more often than not because people will take the path of least resistance. And if they don't know what to do, they're probably not going to do the extra bit that you're wanting them to do.
Right. They don't know they don't know they need to do that. Right. And that's a really perfect one because as in all things, awareness, mindful awareness. Because before we can release these things, we must first recognize them.
Yeah.
These expectations often operate subtly and silently and quietly, but make no mistake, they are jam packed with assumptions, plans, pre 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 picked emotional reactions if someone doesn't do something you want them to do or
Yeah.
you're expecting them to do. So do these introspections, do these daily check-ins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talk about it sort of here and there about the daily check ins, but it's so important. If
Hmm.
you're on this journey, the more you can check in with yourself, I don't care if you're doing it 50 times a day, it is vital because it's those check ins is where you start to get a read on your car. If you keep avoiding the check engine light while it's flashing at you, your
Hmm.
car will break down eventually.
Yeah. 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 It tried to warn you.
Yep.
I think almost all of us are really guilty of that one
You know,
because check engine light you could just see dollars floating out of your purse or your wallet or
yeah, you're
whatever.
like, I'll get to that later.
But that looks expensive. And sometimes it is. I just paid like 22 to get my car fixed after a few months, but it could have been 5 or 6,000.
Right.
Silver linings, am I right? Another tool we'll go tell you about is one that I always go to every show, and I've got you going to it for every show, journaling. Have a dialogue with your ego. Write honestly, write deeply. This is where your expectations surface. They kind of rise to the surface where you can see them so that you can witness them and confront them. And then you choose to change. And here's just a couple prompts. I know you have some for everybody, but these are just a couple prompts when we're talking about tools. What outcomes am I attached to right now? What fear lies beneath this expectation? How might my peace grow if I surrender this, whatever this is? And this is kind of like, you know, it's not necessarily deep shadow work, but it's kind of shadow work on the go, shadow work light, right? Like the fast food version of shadow work, kind of meeting yourself while you're traveling. But again, you do it without judgment and you offer yourself grace.
I love that.
Shadow work light, get it now.
So I know you also had an affirmative prayer you wanted to share today that really empowers this conversation.
Yeah, yeah. We'll try a little affirmative prayer for everyone. First thing you're gonna do is you're gonna close your eyes. Divine source of light, I release the weight of my expectations. I no longer demand the future to bend to my will. Instead, I align myself with the flow of your sacred rhythm. Where I have clung, I now let go. Where I have resisted, I now soften. Where I have doubted, I now trust. I surrender not from weakness, but from wisdom. Scratch that. For I know that true strength lies not in control, but in presence, patience, and peace. Let my heart become still, so that I may hear your quiet guidance. Let my hands be open, so that I may receive what is truly meant for me. Let my path be clear, not through force, but through faith. I trust what is delayed is not denied. I trust that what leaves makes space for what is meant for me. I trust the light reveals itself in perfect time. And so it is.
God, that's powerful. For anyone who enjoyed that, we are going to be attaching this either as a document within the podcast description or we'll have a link to get that affirmative prayer so you can use it at home whenever you need to sort of get that grounding and cultivate that strength.
And we're going to start doing more prayers, affirmative prayers. So let us know if you like them or not. So it's kind of something we're trying.
We'll add a poll into the podcast episode. So, yeah, please give us your answer within the poll or which you prefer seeing, the journaling. I mean, we're going to throw it all in there, but so some closing thoughts on all this. Expectation, it's like all things we teach. It's not something that you can just turn off on the light of a switch of the flick of a switch. It is something that takes diligence, it takes patience, and it takes time. An expectation isn't evil. It's just a sneaky way we avoid vulnerability.
Mm.
Another big thing to think about, letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means
Mm-hmm.
allowing space for deeper harmony and authenticity. And that goes for you and the people in your life. Because so often, we all have things we need to get off our chest that we're holding in because we care and don't want to hurt each other. Have those
Mm-hmm.
conversations.
Yeah. Expectations are most often invisible, but they're burdens. Don't get it mixed up. They're quiet, subtle, but they're very heavy, especially the toll they take on ourselves and others. They shape our moods, they strain our relationships, and they really distort our view of ourselves and then the world. And when we leave them unexamined, they become these again, this cage, these prison bars, if you will, of our own making. And they steal our joy, and they steal our presence, and they steal our freedom ultimately. But you're not bound by them. You're free to hope without demanding. You're free to desire without clinging, right? You're free to show up in your life, not with a script, but with your presence as you are, auth- authentically.
I'm glad I'm not the only one today.
That's a tough word today, you know. But listen, like Michael said, surrendering is not giving up, it is letting go of what you cannot control so that you can fully embrace the things and focus your energy on the things that you can, like your attitude, your intention, your alignment with the light, the universe, God. You really need to learn to let go of the shoulds, because these shoulds, they kind of silence your authentic voice. And you need to let go of these timelines that exist outside of real time, which is now, because these suffocate your growth. You need to let go of these assumptions that keep you disconnected from the truth.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Michael, the way of Ashla calls us back to center. It invites us to meet life as it is, not what we demand it to be or try to control it to be, right?
Yeah.
And in doing so, you will find peace not beyond the moment, but within it. So breathe. Stop and breathe every once in a while and trust. That's all I got.
You know, and just one other thing I got to say out there, and I know you're going to agree with this. If you can master this skill, if you can,
Mm-hmm.
especially with other people, because I see this everywhere where expectations are destroying relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If you can bring yourself to a place where you have no expectations on anyone, aside from common courtesy, you know, the things that need to be kept, the more you can approach relationships without expectations,
Yeah.
without care, not looking for the little slights, not looking for the begrudgings, like someone forgets to wish you happy birthday or doesn't show up on an occasion because they had something going on. The more you can just put these things to the side, the more
Yeah.
you're going to cultivate an abundance of relationships and happy relationships. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
if people keep disappointing you, let people show you the place they have in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get to this place, watch yourself never be upset at people ever again, or at least
Mm-hmm.
until necessary.
Right.
But I
Right.
mean it when I say it's a superpower. This is something I've practiced my whole life before even learning what the healing journey was. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the difference in me and almost everyone else I'm around who struggle with this and the weight they carry with them and how effortless relationships are for me because I don't hold
Mm-hmm.
anyone to a stand, especially my own stand.
Right.
Now I'm learning to do that for myself, and that in itself is empowering. But as we talked about earlier,
Right.
so to dive into these affirmations we got for today, I release the need to control outcomes and trust the flow of life. I meet myself and others with patience and understanding. I let go of what I cannot change and find peace in what is. I am open to life unfolding in ways beyond my imagination. I choose presence over perfection in every moment. For our journalers out there, where in my life am I
Which should be
cleaning?
all of you.
It is all of you, right? Right? Where in my life am I cleaning to a specific outcome? What do I assume others should know or do without ever saying it? Contemplate these things, write them down. And then ask yourself, how can I approach these things so that they become known instead of unspoken expectations? Or when it comes to an outcome, why is it important that this goes perfectly? In what ways can I let go to move gracefully through this change, this event? How can I release the need for control of how things should go and be present with it?
Mm.
For our exercise today, name the expectation. Close your eyes and pause for a moment. Ask yourself, where in my life am I holding a strong expectation right now? Maybe it's about how someone should act, how something should turn out, or how you should be showing up. Just name it. One simple sentence. They should support me more. I should be further by now. Notice the feeling within you. How does holding this expectation feel in my body? Is there tension in your chest, your jaw, your gut? Just breathe into that spot. No need to change it. Just notice it. Step 3, soften and let go. Try the simple phrase as you exhale. I release what I cannot control. I am open to what is. Say this multiple times, 2 or 3 at least. Picture the expectation melting or floating away, lightening your body, your breath, and your energy. Breathe in the peace, exhale the control. Breathe in presence, exhale expectation. Well, thank you so much if you've gotten this far with us. We always appreciate you joining us on these conversations. With love and
Those are
gratitude.
my favorite ones. Those are my favorite. The ones that make it to this part, those are my favorite ones.
Best
My
friends.
favorite folks. They're my best friends, yeah.
With love and gratitude. Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucium.